start the meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico and the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among the united cultures. Good evening, everybody. Happy New Year, and welcome to the first council meeting of 2020, January 8th. Following the Pledge of Allegiance, the next item would be approval of the agenda. Council, I don't have any changes to make to it tonight, although before we get to that, let me read my little thing here. At the request of the public, town staff, and members of the governing body, in order to expedite business and conduct a more efficient, orderly meeting, the guidelines listed below will be followed at Edgewood Town Council meetings. The public is asked to remain silent throughout the meeting so all attendees can hear what is being said. Public will be heard from only at public comment, which is limited to 2 minutes per individual. If a member of the governing body wishes to hear from a member of the public seated in the audience, the mayor will ask the remainder of the governing body whether they wish to hear from the individual. If there is an objection, the member of the public will not be heard from. The public is encouraged to contact members of the governing body prior to the meeting to express their opinions and concerns, which will enable the governing body to achieve its purposes and expedite business. Cursing, name-calling, and any type of verbal abuse will not be tolerated. If recording devices used by the public are interfering with the quality of the sound of the meeting, those devices will be required to be turned off. Guidelines for the governing body: the presiding officer, mayor or mayor pro tem, controls access to the floor. It is out of order to speak unless granted the floor except for point of order or certain privileged motions. For each action item on the agenda, the first utterance from a counselor will be the statement of a motion, enabling the discussion to stay focused on the action to be decided. There is no need to obtain the floor to second the motion. When a motion that is in order has been moved and seconded, the chair formally places the question before the assembly by stating the question. The chair states the exact motion and indicates that it is open to debate. Traditionally, the person making the motion initiates discussion and debate on the matter at hand. Debate discussion must be confined to the question before the body. All debate must be addressed to the presiding officer and not to the members. Debate must be confined to the question before the body. One member should not interrogate another member or person speaking from the public except through the chair. Presiding officer may set reasonable time limits in debate. Time may be extended or limited upon a motion of the body. It is the right of every member who notices a breach of the rules to insist on their enforcement, thereby calling upon the chair for a ruling and enforcement. So, council, back to approval of the agenda. I have no changes tonight, so I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we approve this evening's agenda.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, council. Next item is the consent agenda, which consists of 3 town council meeting minutes for November 20th, December 4th, and December 18th.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda, omitting all edits from all of the meeting minutes, November 20, December 4, and December 18, and to pass the originally drafted minutes.
We have a second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes.
Councilor Jaramillo?
You would start with Counselor Abrams unless he's passing.
Councilor Abrams?
I think that we need to take the advice of our legal counsel and the legal counsel from the Municipal League and limit our meeting minutes to summary minutes and rely on the verbatim of our audio. There are multiple reasons for doing so, one of which is not only to protect council members, but also to protect members of the public. There are, in some instances, possibilities where people's statements may be considered if written in our minutes, libelous. And I do not want to see this council, nor any member of our public, embroiled in that kind of a discussion legally. And I'll just leave it at that.
Counselor Jaramillo?
Next would be Counselor Holly. Sorry, I just wanted to give you, because you seconded the motion, so do you have any?
Counselor Abraham seconded the motion.
Not on the consent agenda.
Were you second on that?
Yeah,
Okay.
but it doesn't follow in that order, so go ahead.
Okay. I just thought that whoever made the motion and seconded, then they were to talk first. So I just wanted, anyway, just check. All right, so the changes that I proposed here really speak to the substance of what people say. And I think there's key points in here, not only in my comments, but also in some members of the public comments, and also in the discussion about the comp plan as it relates to the meeting on November 20th. And then the red line changes for the December 4th meeting. Again, just really getting to a summary of what the people actually said. And it wasn't verbatim, word for word. However, people did make important points in here. And I think that it's good that it's in the town record as being in here. And something that I kind of noticed as I was going through is, anytime people talked about violation of nepotism ordinance or EPCOR or residential sewer, those are for the large part left out. So I think the public has made it very clear to us, counselors, that they want the substance of what they've said to be reflected in the record. And they want those who they've elected to be able to speak and have that shown in the record, because in the future, people will point back to these minutes. So we also heard from a member of the public last time who said, you should state what the meeting really said. And if you don't like what it said, don't leave it out. Just next time, don't act that way, right? So I think in respect to myself as an individual council member, for my words, and also for the public, what they have stated, these changes are accurate and need to be reflected in the minutes.
Counselor Abraham, you have anything?
No, I just think that in the past, we've always made corrections to the council minutes as requested by council members.
Well, one of the problems I have with this is it not only adds a bunch of verbiage in there that I don't think is necessary, because we do have the audios. Here on one of them, it gets into editorializing. And I'm quite sure this is not something I said. So I like the original minutes that we were given. I think that's what we should stick with. We don't do verbatim transcripts, never have. The ones here from November 20th, it's been basically 3 months. That's not something that's good. The idea is, if you got some changes to make, you get it on a Friday. You got till Wednesday, and usually it was corrections, spellings, grammatical stuff, Scrivener's errors, as they call it. And to wait 3 months and then see this in here, and like I say, I see editorializing in here. That's not what we do. I think it's a bad thing for this council to head in that direction. I agree, we need to just stick with the ones staff does and make changes if it's something spelling, grammatical, or whatever. not do that.
Mr. Mayor, I do have some comments.
Go ahead.
I did come with some notes, and again, following our workshop that we had last year with our municipal attorney, Randy Van Vleck, he was the one that said, you just need to note attendance of the governing body and the record of votes taken. And he even suggested that we not include public comments. And my opinion is the audio is available for verbatim minutes. It's not up to the counselors to rewrite the minutes. This is the clerk's work product that he attests to when he signs our approved minutes. And I even brought an example of our P&Z Commission meeting minutes. I think they're so nice and clean and easy to follow. You know, it's basically decisions that have been made and the attendance. Finally, remember Attorney Van Vleck, his final comment was, your vote is your voice, you know, so those are our record of our opinions.
Call for the question.
Mr. Mayor, I have one more comment based upon that. So does that mean all audios from as far back as we have them will now be loaded onto the website and available to the public? Because we have several missing.
I don't manage the website. But I would think, at a point, we do have the stuff where we get rid of old records. Used to be the policy of this board that they only kept them for 30 days. We've kept them a lot longer than that. I think there's a point at which, you know, you need if people copy them, they can have them forever. So,
Are you recommending that everybody get a copy of those audio minutes?
if they want them.
Okay.
Mayor,
Counselor?
my response to some of the other points that were made, I don't feel that anything in here was editorializing. I think the change that I made in your section just added what you said in the public meeting, and that
Not what I
Councilor
said.
Abrams called point of order to discuss the comp plan. That's what I added in your section. And then also, if you read the Open Meetings Act, it does refer to documenting the substance of the proposals. And so it's not just the votes alone. And we can listen to the public and add in these things because they've asked us to.
So the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to call the question.
What's that?
I said I am going to call the question.
Okay, and so the motion on the floor was to approve these three sets of minutes as originally adopted without any of the edits shown here in these ones for November 20th, December 4th. We can do a roll call vote on this one. Start on that end, Counselor Jaramillo.
Nay.
Counselor Abraham.
Nay.
Counselor Abrams.
Aye.
Counselor Holly.
Aye.
We have a tie vote, and Mayor votes aye. Next item on the agenda is public comment on general matters. First person up is Tom McGill.
Thank you very much. Tom McGill, 12 Buck Road. I noticed that a resident on Church Street hooked up to the sewer by crossing the road for $17,000. My question is, why did they cross the road? The argument to rush Phase 1 of the wastewater collection was to get laterals in Church Street before it was paved. I looked at that and I said, this needs to be looked at. So I went back to the plans, which were signed and 100% complete and published the same week that you made the, that you agreed to go out for bid. These plans show taps and laterals east of Cactus down to Quail Trail, which were designed and presumably paid for but never built. The Cactus end of the connections are fine. So the residents along Church Street who choose to or are forced to hook up will face very high costs individually to go under the road. You can figure out why this is problematic. What I would like to point out, that may be a reason, but the problem is that the citizens are going to have to pay for whatever shortcomings you had in your budget or design or control. I'm not sure you got what you paid for. The second thing I want to say real quickly is that these plans were available at the time you made your decision to go out for bid. We have a particularly talented person here who's analytical that would have made good use of this kind of data, I believe, and especially in the ongoing process. Very quickly, your audio is not available legally. It's put on YouTube. There's no legal way to download it unless you release it specifically. Thank you very much.
Next person is Sabina Price.
To all the individuals on the governing board, I'm going to address my question to Mr. Abrams after I make a statement in regards to the December 18th meeting. During that meeting, I had asked you if you would stand with the citizen of Edgewood against the takeover of EPCOR. You said you could not answer that question as you did not have enough facts. Minutes later, you were extremely adamant about the solar system for the waste planet, as you did not want the city to go into further debt. Interesting. As you know, the facts are right in front of you. The citizens, the ones that are sitting here and that live here, they do not want EPCOR takeover, and this far you've already spent $87,000 in legal fees, maybe more. With the EPCOR, legal fees would even amount into millions. Money that could be spent on salaries for the police department, other public servants, infrastructure, and other stuff that we need here in the city. If these are not enough facts for you to decide on the issue with EPCOR, then you either have the impression that the citizens of Edgewood are incompetent, or on the other hand, you might be very unsuitable for this job. Having said this, here's my question. Give me one reason why anybody here or in Edgewood should re-elect you.
Maybe I won't run again.
Congratulations.
We'll see.
Next person is Karen Kaiser.
Karen Kaiser, 30 Futures Loop. John Quincy Adams said, if your actions inspire others to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and become more, you're a great leader. Edgewood is not blessed with that type of leadership. Proposed changes to limit the time we can hear from the 4 counselors that we elected is wrong. They are our voice, and these meetings are the only opportunity we have to hear from them in the proper setting of a public meeting. The rare occasion when counselors have had long comments have only been to respond to rather vicious and slanderous attacks by you, Mr. Mayor. Next, you seek to limit the public comment time during public hearings. Even more concerning to me is your restrictions on what council may bring into one of your closed sessions. No purses, no phones. What's next? A strip search and a pat-down? What are you afraid of? The Open Meetings Act expressly allows officials to phone into a closed session, yet you forbid it. That indicates to me that something occurs in your closed sessions that you want hidden. A fearful, paranoid leader is not good for the health or the growth of our town, and I respectfully wish you would step down when your term should have ended in March of 2020 to allow Edgewood to prosper. Thank you.
Next up is Louis Abraham.
The mayor spent 4 years of his 4-year term attempting to silence the people of Edgewood and to suppress vital information concerning the running of our town. The mayor thinks this is his town and there for his personal gain. after limiting citizens' input to 2 minutes each and forbidding a citizen to yield their time to another, and repeatedly telling us to speak to our representatives outside of meetings, the mayor now wants to limit each counselor's time to only 5 minutes under matters for the counselor. This is another attempt to shut down public input. Are you going to allow this to happen, Edgewood? The 5-minute rule is another attempt to silence Councilors Abraham and Jaramillo, who questioned the mayor's motives, morals, and ethics when he fails to follow parliamentary procedure, when he misleads the people, and when he refuses to recuse himself on the tie votes when the issues improve his family's financial position. Edgewood, if you don't get out of your cocoons and hold the mayor and council accountable to you, you'll have no one to blame but yourselves when the mayor drains your banking account. The EPCOR water takeover and/or lawsuit will break the town. The mandatory sewer hookups will break you. The mayor's secret plan for quadrupling the water rates with no improvements will break you. The mayor's 4-year term has been and continues to be about Bassett capital gains. Edgewood should have had an election this March 3rd. However, the mayor and majority council had an option to shorten their terms by 68 days, thereby having an election November 5th for mayor and 2 councilors and taking office January 2020. Another option was to give themselves a 22-month extension without voter approval. This was their choice. You should demand an immediate.
Next person is Linda Burke.
Good evening, council. Just a few updates on upcoming events. Next week, January 16th, at the Chamber is our monthly networking lunch. We'd love to have any or all of you. Also, next Thursday evening, I have some invitations to hand out to you, which I'll do in a second. Retro 66 is a nonprofit organization that the town of Edgewood has played an integral part in getting formed. Their general purpose is to preserve the history and landmarks of Route 66, especially in the East Mountain region. And they are hosting a highlights of the Route 66 Film Festival. It'll be at the high school at 7 to 9 p.m. next Thursday, the 16th. The council is invited to a VIP reception at 6 p.m. prior to that. And then the other item I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention is the April 25th Country Living and Lifestyles Expo. This year it will be held at EVCA here in Edgewood, and it features region-wide businesses and services, a health fair with free screenings, breakout sessions for information on home improvements and other valuable topics. And that will be promoted on Albuquerque radio and television. So we hope to bring as many people as possible to our community and showcase what we do and the benefits of our community.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Next up is Ray Seegers.
My name is Ray Seegers. I'm a local businessman. Opposed to quite a bit of the operating resolution that you're going to vote on, so I'd like to talk to it a few seconds here. Certainly limiting my counselors or who I have to go through to get public input, because these 2-minute limitations make it almost impossible. Resolutions aren't even public hearings. Limiting my counselors to 5 minutes of discussion is ridiculous when we have an ordinance that might be 40 pages long and different paragraphs have to be addressed. That's just silly. But what worries me is number D, distribution of materials to governing body. Councilor Abram at one time allowed us to, or passed a resolution that said everything you're going to talk about up here and be on the agenda should be in the hands and ready for distribution to the councilors, okay? 7 days prior to the meeting. That was a good idea because we're having problems we're having now. But the way this is written today, it says all written material, must be distributed 3 days prior to a meeting. I'd vote for 7, but and only these items can be discussed. Now, does that, this is a question, does that mean I can go 3 days prior, look on the website, read your packets, but I can't put my comments by emailing them to my counselors? Because there's no way I can read it and have comments and meet the 3-day deadline. That's the first time I've ever seen it. I think that's a flaw. And I think you probably ought to say something like, this does not, well, you should say this doesn't apply to the public. Okay, their comments can go in at any time, so they can reach their counselors after they've read what you're about to do to them, okay? That's all I have to say.
Is there anybody else want to speak that didn't sign up? Okay, seeing none. We'll move along to matters from the counselors.
Mr. Mayor, I did have that one email come in from Ms. Goodhue. So Ms. Goodhue could not attend tonight, but she did ask that I read her prior emails into the record. So the first one is on October 23rd. I have reviewed the planning and zoning road surfacing priority recommendations February 2019 and feel there is missing information for Jane Lane. There has been school bus traffic on Jane Lane twice a day, 5 days a week for at least the past 2 years. This is not reflected in the recommendations, as well as not indicating fugitive dust. I estimate there are 18 families on this cul-de-sac being affected. In addition, there are 2 non-functioning culverts under this road. This would cut off approximately 12 households with flooding across the road. In addition to the above concerns, I have reviewed the road department quarterly report that indicates Jane Lane had an application of base course. Although I have little knowledge in road maintenance, I have researched some, and it appears that there are other applications after base course. This leads me to believe that we are being exposed to more than usual road dust, and I am personally being affected in regards to my health. I would appreciate review of this in consideration of the above stated problems. I responded back to her, and then her email for that response was, Mr. Torres, thank you for your response and the information provided. I understand there's a need to prioritize arterial connector road improvements and fully back the process in identifying these roads and appropriate action to approve them. Of concern was the lack of information on the road list, and in particular Jane Lane. I had indicated that we have a school bus on Jane Lane twice a day, and the list does not reflect that we have a bus route. Of course, there is fugitive dust on all of our gravel roads, and I was not sure why the list did not indicate this. The concern is without proper identifying factors, prioritizing is skewed. I look forward to the list being brought forward for further discussion in the coming year and notification of future meetings. Since my last email, I have identified other roads near me that have 20-mile-per-hour speed limits, those being Christine Court, Maple, Birch, Salida del Sol. This being said, I do not understand the county's criteria for setting speed limits and the town's limited ability to address these inconsistent speed limits. I am aware of the stated need for a traffic study to address the speed limit, but have learned that the study could end with undesirable results. As for the base course on the roads, I understand the decision to use the application, but the fine particulate that is useful in binding is also ending up engulfing our homes. This is creating unhealthy conditions and setting the neighborhood up for failure. I feel the decision to use base course should consider the posted speed limits as well. Thank you for your time and consideration in these matters, Donna Goodhue. And then on December 4th, she emailed a study or an article on road dust and its effects on human health, a literature review. And that is what she asked me to read into the record.
Thank you. All right, the next item then is matters from the counselors. Counselor Abrams.
Well, I don't have a whole lot tonight. I'll just see if we can move along.
Okay. Counselor Abraham.
I do have a couple things. The first one is I have this flyer from Wildlife West. They are looking to hire 14 youth, well, approximately 14 youth, between the ages of 14 and 24. The jobs will be in March through September. So they're asking you to come by Wildlife West for an interview, call them to set up an appointment. Bring a resume and 2 references with you when you come. This will be posted in the library in hopes of finding the best candidates to work at Wildlife West this summer. The next thing that I have is, I guess it doesn't pertain because I'll be talking about the old business in a minute. Do you want me to talk about that now or later?
However you want to play it.
Okay. So I had asked previously for us to have a list of old business on our agenda. Most other boards that I'm a member of have new business, old business, things like that. And I feel like there's several old business items that we need to keep at the forefront of our mind so that we don't forget about them. I have a couple of recommendations that I would like to put forth. One would be the water PER. I do believe we need to discuss it. I think I had recommended maybe we get someone from Rural Water or from the engineer's office to come and discuss it with us. The other thing is I'm assuming we still need a wastewater plant operator. So any job openings on staff or advisory boards, I would like to see listed as old business. And anything, like, I know we have the calendar review and we say we're calling for a public hearing on this date, and then maybe we do and maybe we don't. Those things, I would like to see what public hearings we are out there that we've talked about but haven't had. And so that's my request for items on the agenda for old business. Thank you.
Counselor Holly.
Okay, I would like to report back on the CNM educational classes. I heard from CNM this week, and they said they are going forward with the HWPS 1005 class. That's the Careers in Health, Wellness, and Public Safety online class, which begins on February 3rd. They're still taking registrations, but they have enough to go forward with that class. So I want to thank everybody who helped get the word out. It really made a big difference. And the other class that they had proposed was a vet tech class, and apparently there was no interest in that one. So that one that's going to go by the wayside. But thank you all. And if you know anybody that's still interested in this online class, they're still taking names and registrations, and maybe this will be a foundation for more to grow from this. Thank you.
Counselor Jaramillo.
Mayor, I have a question for Counselor Abraham, if there's no objections.
Go ahead.
So I was just curious if you're aware of any public hearings that we said we were going to have that we didn't have, because you made that statement, but I wasn't sure if you knew of some.
I was looking back through minutes, and it all got started with this email about roads. And so what happened when I was looking back through minutes of when I know that Counselor Abrams was on council at the last time we adjusted road speed limits. And so at that time, there was a public hearing that we were going to have. I believe it was July 6th or in that time frame. And then when we got ready to look at the list, we had the wrong list. So we postponed it, and then we postponed it, and then we postponed it, and we didn't actually have the public hearing until sometime in, I believe it was December. I think it was December 19th, possibly. Anyway, that just kept going forth without us having any update on do we have a new current roads list? Have the roads been, had their speed their traffic study done. It's just some things like that. Not anything currently. This was a concern that got raised when I was looking back previously.
Okay, thank you. And then I just had a couple of comments. First, I wanted to give a shout out to EVCA. I was looking at their ACT scores of their students and at the proficiency levels of their students, and wow, you guys, if you ever get a chance to look at those, amazing what they're doing. They're right in our own community. We are very, very blessed. I saw proficiency in reading, 90% of the kids proficient in certain grades in certain areas. But statewide, it's more like 30%. And so we all need to support EVCA to the extent that we can. I'm very proud that they are Edgewood's first high school, and I'm just very, very thankful that they are turning out students that can score well, get into college, write well, read well, so that's really great. And then secondly, while I was on the school board, I was blessed with the opportunity to go to the Leadership New Mexico Local Government Leadership Program, and I graduated from that. And each year, they put the word out to the elected officials to spread the word. And so I just wanted to let you guys know on council, if you haven't already attended that with Leadership New Mexico, it's a very worthwhile program to attend, and they're accepting applications right now. So just to let you know. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
Realize I kind of gave up on my comment. I really don't know how to express exactly the idea that I have, so I generally err on the side of shutting my mouth when I don't quite get it, but I'm going to try. We've got three things that I really think we need to pay some more attention to. Once upon a very long time ago, we passed a resolution to identify roads and annually come back to council with a list of roads. I know that Planning and Zoning has been working on this for quite some time. There was also a second resolution, and that resolution passed right after the first one, and I'm not going to say how many years ago that was. It was a very long time ago. That one was to give us designs so that when we build our roads, we can build our roads safely. And this is the part that I don't quite know how to express. As all of you know on the council, and many of you in the audience know, one of my pet projects was the trail on 344 that's still not completed. And that is only one of many trails, and later on this week we'll be talking about our comprehensive plan, and on it is a list of trails. What is happening in our community right now is that trails that have been used traditionally, those of you who ride horseback probably ride on some of them, but many of those traditional trails, people walk, people ride horseback, and people, run, jog, get out and exercise on. But a lot of those trails are getting fenced. And I don't know how this council can impress upon our neighbors, or how our neighbors can impress upon each other the importance of those trails. Two trails in particular that I have been using for many years now are fenced. And at one point, I was threatened at gunpoint in our community. Okay? So, I think we need to have a discussion about trails and roads and designs and where and who and what that benefit is to our community. One of the biggest, most important things in our community is our beautiful outdoors. I sure want to preserve as much of that as I can. So, having said that, yeah, I don't know how we do this. I would entertain any kind of suggestions from you, please. And Ray was asking about, the 72-hour thing. That was, what was his last name? White? Jim? Was it Jim? I can't remember. Our state representative from a few years ago. Jim Smith, there we go, Jim Smith. Yeah, Jim Smith passed that 72-hour. He did the addition. He and I talked quite a bit about what I was proposing, and he took that to the state legislature, and that became part of the Open Meetings Act, actually. And so that's where the 72 hours comes from. It pertains to the town and its distribution of documents for meetings. It does not mean anything. I mean, you can call me anytime. You can call me all kinds of things you have.
Mr. Mayor?
Anyway, I'll get down off my soapbox now.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Counselor Abrams, if that's okay. When you talked about trails and people fencing these, did we get easements for those trails when we built them?
I have no idea. We didn't build them. They're traditional trails. There have been, there are trails that follow gas line easements. There are trails that follow water line easements. There are trails that follow section lines. There are trails that have been traditionally used to move cattle back and forth by the people who homesteaded here many, many years ago, and they've been in existence for a long, long time. There are several trails. There's actually the remnants of the original Santa Fe Trail that runs through the middle of Edgewood and right through the corner of my property. So, I mean, you can see the old wheel tracks. You can see the old wagon tracks. So, I mean, there's a lot of history. There's a lot of other stuff out there that I think we need to pay some more attention to, and honestly, I think if we asked, I think the importance to the community if it were across my property, and I was able to facilitate, I certainly would. I've got an eye on a piece of property that's got an easement with a gas line up it, and every single day I see my wife and our dogs and the neighbors on their horses and me on one or two, and that little piece of trail is well worn, but it's not a designated trail. Okay. None of these are. They're traditional. And they're all over the community. They're everywhere.
So is that something that if we were going to actually enforce people not fencing these, wouldn't we need to identify those easements?
I think the first thing is to ask the community if this is something that they really, really want. I really want it.
Okay.
I mean, this is in, this is in my personal interest to have trails in my community.
Right.
I would hope that it would be in the rest of the general public's interest to have trails in our community that we can use in perpetuity. If that means creating some sort of facility to make that happen, that's what I'm saying we need to get together and do.
Okay. That was just my question, was how would we go about identifying easements and
another great place
asking for them if we needed them?
We probably need something. I don't know if it's an easement. We need something.
Okay.
A dedication
but
or
if
a
it's not,
gift or.
But if it's not a legal easement, in the future, the next owner may not want you crossing it.
And this is what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I have at least 4 that I know of that have been fenced off.
Okay.
And one was actually on a community horse lane. There was a horse lane that all of the residents had fenced back, and they've marked it Horse Lane. And right now, at the end of it, there's a big old fence, and you can't go that way, you gotta go this way. It's just turned into a kind of a dead end almost.
And I know the city of Albuquerque is struggling with the same thing on the Bosque. You know, people, if they own the property, if there's not an easement, people
Well,
have the right to fence it.
Just with all due respect to you guys, I think this would be a great topic for Saturday, to be able to have the discussion back and forth and just brainstorm about the comp plan and the trails and.
I'll leave it.
Thank you.
Next item then would be matters from the clerk treasurer, Mr. Torres.
Mayor, council, so I guess with respect to the conversation that was just going on, I think that would actually be a really great workshop on its own between the council and P&Z. For several reasons. You've got the paving priority list. I think it would be nice for them to have your input as to what's important to you. I mean, when they get that list and when they start compiling it, which hopefully they'll start here in February, what criteria is important to you as the governing body, because ultimately you are the ones who are going to pass it. So I think a joint workshop might be in order. So if that's something you're considering, I'll have Tanya get in touch with you guys at a later date, and maybe we can set something up. Also, with respect to road standards, I think, that should be another standalone as well, just so we can be all on the same page as to what does the town want for roads. I mean, if we're requiring a developer to come in, or if the town's working the roads, we should have kind of some road standards that we're going to keep up. Right now, we do have standards in our subdivision ordinance, but then we also have some stuff, and I think they worked on some on the Section 16 master plan, so there's some different road standards in there, and I think having a uniform set, so that might be something at a later date to consider. And then also, that would also help answer questions for Ms. Goodhue, or all the other residents that are having questions or concerns with the roads, and formally putting something in about maybe like the road adoption policy, give them an actual standard to bring it up to, and say, this is what we're going to do, this is the expectation of the town, this is what the public can expect, because right now, we really don't have a definitive answer to give someone when they give it. I mean, we can give them our best attempt, but we don't have anything formal in writing from the town that this is exactly what we're going to do. I mean, like I said, we do have parts in it, but they conflict. The subdivision conflicts with the Section 16 plan, and then there's just things that aren't in there. So I do agree, I think we should have maybe a couple joint workshops just where the governing body and the P&Z Commission can actually discuss these things and hopefully get something in place for the community. Let's see. I do have something. I passed out a letter to you all, and it was our letter back to Mr. Wirtz. And it's regarding, it was if you recall, in November when Mr. Wirtz came to our meeting and read into the record his request at the town for the litigation between Mr. Roden and Mr. Hill with respect to Hillcrest Master Plan. So finally heard back from our attorneys and then wrote the response letter saying that, we're not a party to this lawsuit. We will fully comply with the IPRA requests, but we're not going to, essentially, we're not going to keep an open-ended IPRA just to provide any information back and forth from either party. And that's at the advice of our attorneys. We finally received, on a different topic, the notice of obligation from the feds for the Bachelor Draw Bridge. So now we can finally put out that advertisement. It's going to be a 30-day requirement because it's federal rules. We'll have the bid opening on February 13th. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Mayor, I do have two questions.
Go ahead.
Mr. Torres, when you said that we wouldn't have an open-ended IPRA, the thought occurred to me, is that what they were asking for?
Well, Mayor, Council, if I may, so anytime someone asks for information, that's kind of an IPRA request, and their letter was asking for any and all correspondence, future correspondence between the town and Mr. Hill, if I believe that's what the letter said. So our attorneys, when I asked them that, they believe that to be an open-ended IPRA of just any anything that the town has, we're going to provide it. And because there's legal implications there, they didn't want the town to get in trouble for providing information that wasn't formally IPRA'd.
Okay. And then secondly, could you address why if our vote was to have the lines on both sides of the road and our RFP said that the collection line should be on both sides of Church, why they're not? Because that's just what I was hearing from Mr. McGill.
Mayor, council, so the lot that did connect to the sewer was not in that phase of the sewer connection. They were actually going to be in a second phase, and they chose to connect. So that, as that lot sit where the line was, they were not, their property did not meet the feet requirement for the connection. They actually chose, their septic tank failed, and they chose to make that connection. So that's why there was that that other connection, and the town made that stub out across to the property line. So that is the town's portion right there, and they made the connection to the lot line.
So is that what, I'm just curious why that was not included in the original construction all along the line that was built already?
Mayor, council, once again, it's where the position of the house was on that lot and the proximity to it. There are several houses that are along Church Street that are not within that proximity to have a connection. In the second phase, where there's that draw that runs kind of close through, if you recall, there's a line that'll go through there, and that's where that one was allocated to go through if and when that line was built. But because their septic was failing, they wanted to connect now.
Right. But which stub outs were put in place? How did you pick and choose where they would be?
Mayor, council, I believe the engineers did that, and they chose based upon proximity and where there was gravity flow. But once again, I'm not an engineer, I didn't design it, I have no clue how they chose that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a second follow-up question then. What about undeveloped lots?
Mayor, council, I do not believe they put any stub outs to undeveloped lots. I think it was just to the developed land.
Okay, thanks.
Next item is matters from the mayor. I've been a little busy, so I don't have anything tonight. Excuse me. That brings us then to action items. The first item up is discussion, consideration, action on the recommendation to hire Dean Salazar as a police officer for the town of Edgewood. Councilors, I'll entertain a motion on that, and we can bring Mr. Salazar up here and introduce him.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve Dean Salazar as police officer for the town of Edgewood.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Chief, go ahead.
Okay. Mayor, council, this is Dean Salazar. He's coming to us from, or hopefully coming to us from Santa Rosa. So he's almost a 4-year officer. He'll be 4 years in May, correct? So with that, we've run him through the test, run him through the background. He is LEA certified, so he's good to go. Good to go. I don't know if you have any questions for him, or?
Dean, why don't you introduce yourself to council and the public?
Dean Salazar, 32 years old.
Step up to the mic.
Sorry. Dean Salazar, 32 years old. I've lived in Santa Rosa most of my life. I did corrections 7 years in the prison out in Santa Rosa. I graduated the LEA Academy in 2016. I worked for the sheriffs for 3 years and the city for 1 year right now. I brought my family, my wife, Stephanie, and my 2 kids. Sorry if you guys heard them. It's kind of late. But I'd be greatly appreciated.
Council have any questions for Mr. Salazar?
I do.
Go ahead.
I'm curious to know why you considered employment with us in the town of Edgewood.
Well, we've been wanting to come here for a while, about a couple years now. We like the town. We've driven through it many times. This past year, we've been driving through a lot more, trying to figure out a place to stay. My buddy does work for the police department here, and he told me about it, and it's really great because I worked with him out in Guadalupe County Sheriff's Office, and he kind of pushed me to this side.
No other questions, I'll do a roll call vote. Start here. Councilor Holly?
Aye.
Councilor Abrams?
Aye.
Councilor Abraham?
Aye.
Councilor Jaramillo?
Aye.
Thank you, council.
Welcome.
Welcome aboard, Dean. Let's take a couple minutes break here. I need to go get something.
Ready to take the stink belt off.
Into session. Next, item B is discussion, consideration, action on Resolution 2020-01, Open Meetings Act Resolution for the Town of Edgewood, and I'll entertain a motion on this, council.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2020-01, Open Meetings Act Resolution for the Town of Edgewood, superseding Resolution number 2018-29.
We have a
Second.
second. Discussion.
Go ahead, Councilor Holly.
I guess the only comment I have is, I noticed item number 2 on page 2, that we'll be moving meetings to the second and fourth Wednesday.
That is the theory.
Okay. Other than that, looks good to me.
Basically, what the idea there was give the staff more time to prepare the financial report.
Okay.
Pressure off.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. So
Go
with the
ahead.
GRT coming out on the 15th, and the end of the month reports on the end of the month, so instead of getting the end of the month report on the first meeting, the first week of the month, we'll now be getting it the second week, and then GRT, will that be delayed then to the fourth week?
You want to speak to that, Mr.
Yes,
Torres?
Mayor, Council, so with respect to that, so the way the current system is set up, you'll receive the prior month's financial information and the current month's GRT information, if it's provided. So with the first and the third, that essentially gives us basically 10 business days at best to try and get everything out. So if staff's out or something, there's some problem, that's why there's been some meetings where we just haven't been able to get it to you in time. You know, the reconciliations, those things are being done in time, but just getting the report to you and getting it for the agenda packet just isn't in that time frame. So if we still move it to the second and fourth, it'll at least give us that time for that fourth, for the second meeting, where we can ensure that we can get the full report and the GRT information will be provided. Because I don't know if you recall, I think it was November, the GRT information wasn't available in time to put in the packet. And then, or no, it was December, the GRT information, so it didn't change from month to month, because they're supposed to post it on the 15th, but depending when that day falls, it may be the 17th, it may be the 18th. So this will make sure that you would have it every month, and you would hopefully have the full, town financials plus the GRT for the current month, every month.
Okay, so I'm confused, because there's no way we could have the GRT by the second Wednesday if it doesn't come out till the 15th of the month.
Mayor, Council, it would be the fourth Wednesday. There'd be no way
Okay.
we can get it to you on the second Wednesday. It
Okay,
just
that
says-
was my question. Thank you.
Mayor, I do have a question along those lines.
Go ahead, Counselor.
So in the financial accounting software, if you're reconciling the bank account daily, or at least within the time period that the bank is requiring us to catch mistakes, I just don't see a reason why we couldn't have our reports at any given time. Because really, they're just printouts from the system, and all of those checks that are in the system and reconciled, they're there. So it's just a report that you can print out. So I wanted further explanation on that.
Mayor, Council, the policy you passed requires us to do monthly bank reconciliations. So, and the policy you passed requires the mayor to review the bank statement before we can begin the reconciliation. So you wouldn't get it until the beginning of the month for us to even start the reconciliation. So that's, I can print you a snapshot or report anytime, but we don't actually begin the reconciliation until the mayor signs off on the bank statement, and then we move forward with it.
But you are reconciling the checks that are going out to the bank, just checking the bank accounts for fraud and, like we had that loss that occurred, so we need to make sure that we're doing it within the time frame that the bank requires.
We are checking the checks and we're checking that so we can,
Yeah.
so we can notice it, but we're not actually doing the full-blown reconciliation, and like the policy says, until the mayor has reviewed the bank statement and sign, or until the mayor signs on it, we don't move forward with it.
So is that taking a longer time? I'm just not sure why more time is needed for
Well,
that.
Mayor, Council, I mean, be quite honest, like I said, if we have staff out, I mean, the reconciliation policy, there's calls for separation of duty, so there's only two of us. So if someone's out sick, if someone's out at training, someone's on vacation, there's no way we can get that complete and get that in the packet to you in time for it to be on the first meeting.
Or the 3rd?
Well, the third meeting, that's the one that gives us 10 days, and that's the one that we've been having problems with, where you might get it the very first meeting of the month, and that's just a time requirement that it takes. I mean, we had, one of the staff members out one month, I was in training another month, wasn't able to get it done.
So how does this help? Because either you have the 3rd week or the 2nd week to get it done. I mean, I'm just not sure, because you've never been expected to get it out the first week, right after the month closed.
Well, it all comes down to when you have your council meetings. We have to have the agenda posted, and we have to have that, so for the second meeting, if we're going with the second, the first and third, so if we take this month, if we were going to do the first and third, that would have been the first, and the third would have been the 15th. That would have given us 1 week to have everything prepared. We had to have it out by the 10th. So if someone was out of the office, someone was on vacation, with our segregation of duty, there's no way we could do that and get it in the packet and get it to you in time for you guys to approve it.
So then you just put it at the next meeting, right?
Well, if it's the first and third, if you're taking January as that month, the
Mhm.
next meeting then would have been February 5th. Then you would have got it a month late.
Right.
So this would just give us that extra time, so we could have got it, so the 8th, if we would have done the 2nd and 4th, it would have been the 8th and the 22nd, and then we could have gotten it to you on that 22nd instead of putting it through.
Packets go out.
Right.
I'm just curious if there's any other reasons, or, if council is opposed to just getting it the next meeting that it's available if someone's on vacation, or, like, what is because it's traditionally always been the first and third, so I'm just wondering if this is the only reason why.
Mayor, Council, this was to accommodate your request to make sure you receive it every month. Some months you've received 2 in 1 month, and, I've taken some flack for that as well, as, I believe Councilor Adamio, you're the one that said, Mr. Torres, are you in the habit of giving this to us a month late? I mean, you did say that, so this is a way to prevent that from happening, so you can get it. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you.
What about the months we don't meet? Like in the summertime, sometimes we don't have meetings at all. So the next month, would
Well,
we?
Mayor, Council, I guess this will at least if, when we have meetings on the, 2 meetings a month, we would be able to get it to you every time. If we only have 1 meeting a month, like this month, we're having one the 8th and the 11th special meeting. You are not going to get the report this month because
Right.
we don't have another meeting unless you want to call a special meeting to approve a financial report. It's your purview and your call.
Okay. I was just, I was just wondering why we changed it. Thank you.
No other discussion? Excuse me. Let's take a roll call vote. Start on that end. Counselor Jaramillo.
Quick question, were there other changes in this one? I don't have a red line copy here. Just the lodger's tax and the planning and zoning, okay.
Planning and zoning, well, planning and zoning, but Parks and Rec.
Okay. All right, aye.
Counselor Abraham.
Aye.
Counselor Abrams.
Aye.
Counselor Holly.
Aye.
Thank you, Council. Next item is discussion, consideration, action on Resolution 2020-02, Town of Edgewood governing body operating resolution. I'll entertain a motion on this.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, we do not pass this resolution, but that we go back to a resolution that works for the people.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded not to pass this resolution. We do a roll call vote on it. Start.
Mayor, Council.
there any
Mayor, point of
discussion?
order. I believe it would go to Councilor
Armijo, or
Abraham.
Abraham.
So I have some serious concerns about the limiting of council's time. I know that we've heard complaint after complaint after complaint about limiting the citizens' time. And so I just have I just think we have not been able to operate this year. We have not got things done. I would like us to go back to an operating resolution that allows a single member of the governing body to bring something to the agenda, as was the intent when the resolution was originally written. And I would like to remove some of these limitations on time. I would like to see that if we're going to use Robert's rules, then we use them, which allows a member of the public to yield their time to someone else. I believe if you're going to limit council's time, you need to limit your own. And so I think we need to look at this. I think we need to go back to something that works.
So I think Councilor Jaramillo next.
Okay, I share some of those same concerns. The changes in here, if you look at it from an outside perspective, you guys, it just doesn't look good. It tells people that you don't want to hear them. That's what it tells people. And so if that's not only the impression, but the decision that you want to make tonight, I think that it's in error. And we're in a difficult place right now with a lot of the major decisions that need to be made for the town's future. And with that, we need to hear from the people. I think it's completely wrong to limit them for public hearings to 5 minutes. I think it's completely wrong to limit counselors' comments to 5 minutes. That's not what was stated in parliamentary procedure training. And again, you're picking and choosing what you want to put in here and what you don't. Also, in regards to the closed session, I've been asking to ease up on the restrictions, and you keep saying that you'll address it at the next version of this resolution, and you have not. And that is that I feel counselors have a right to call into closed session on rare occasions if they absolutely had to. And I do believe they have a right to take a purse into a meeting. They have the right to wear a jacket. I've been wearing a jacket all evening because I'm cold. So you're going to take that right away. You're going to take away my right to have a pencil to write something down that maybe I won't remember later, but I need to be mulling over the facts and information that I'm given to make great decisions for the public. You're taking away that right for me to represent the people in the best way. And it just comes off as a very paranoid and very controlling measure. So, like I mentioned last year, other governmental entities, I have not seen this. This is incredibly extreme. It's not trusting. It's treating people like they're in kindergarten of when they can bring their pencil somewhere. And really, when you go into closed session, there's an expectation that it stays in the room, and that is upon the character of the people, on the council or on that board. If they if they're going to record something or take a note and tell somebody later, they could just tell somebody later anyway. And I think we heard from a member of the public that it just makes it look like you are hiding something. Like you don't want anybody to retain the information, and there's got to be a reason why. I've never seen this in a governmental entity. This is extreme, extremely controlling, and quite offensive, actually, to my professionalism. And so the changes again, I'm just going to end with this comment. The changes that you're proposing, if you look at them from the big picture and you look at them from an outsider's perspective, you guys, your goal is to limit hearing from people, limit hearing from the elected officials, and limiting our ability to represent the public. Now, I can't even bring a guest to come speak because you're eliminating that right. So I am absolutely opposed to these changes.
Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Go ahead.
should we vote this down this evening? Then we no longer have an operating resolution which matches.
No need for any crosstalk.
We no longer have a operating resolution which mirrors our just passed Open Meetings Act, calling for meetings to be moved to the second and fourth Wednesday. There are a few other things that I think an operating resolution needs to cover. I would highly suggest that you identify those items in the current document that you wish to strike, and perhaps change your motion.
Are you asking for a friendly amendment?
No, I'm asking for another motion, but we'll see.
Motion's on the floor, Counselor.
If we vote this down, this is down, and we're going to have to bring it back. You could change your motion to approve it with edits.
Are you asking for a friendly amendment?
I am.
All right. Then I would accept a friendly amendment to approve this operating resolution, number 2020-02, with severe changes. I would like to see, I do agree with we can change the second and fourth Wednesday from the first and third. I would like to strike number 4 that says no quorum of the governing body shall transact any business unless the clerk treasurer or deputy clerk are present. That states to me that only the deputy clerk or the clerk matter. I would like to put back in the red line strike that says the substance of matters discussed and the names of citizens who address the governing body be part of the minutes. I would like to strike the part in C on page 3 that says Robert's Rules of Order do not apply to the members of the public speaking at public comments during the regular, special, or emergency meetings. I believe if we go by Robert's Rules, it needs to apply to everyone. I would like to know if recording devices are used by the public will be required to turn off if they interfere with the quality of the sound. We've had recording devices for several months now, and they have not affected the sound. If we have problems with our sound, we need to fix our sound. I agree the red council capitalized can stay in item number 2, section F. I agree that the next sentence on page 4, where meetings is capitalized, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with inserting deputy clerk along with clerk treasurer in item number 12. I am on the next page, page 5. I believe we need to be able to invite individuals to speak to us. I would like to have that part that's stricken put back in. I would like to, if we're going to limit times, we're going to limit them for everyone where it says for specific lengths of time. I would like to put back in that the public may yield their 2 minutes to another speaker. And on number 17, it says if there is an objection by the member of the public will not be heard from. I think that needs to be a majority vote of the council member to keep a member of the public from speaking. And I believe we need to strike number 18, that limits council comment to 5 minutes. I believe that we need to remove the, let me see, on number 12, the presiding officer may set reasonable time limits in debate. Time may be extended or limited instead of by a motion of the body, by a majority vote of the body. And I would like to see changes in the number 5 on page 9. Under conduct of closed meetings, no member of the governing body shall carry in a closed session writing instrument, electronic device, handbags, or backpacks. I think that just needs to say no recording devices. And I think you need to trust us. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Go ahead.
Sounds to me, excuse me, please. Sounds to me like we've got quite a bit of editing, and I would like to offer a friendly amendment that we table this tonight and do the editing. Editing on the fly generally doesn't do real well.
Point of order, Mayor, we have an amended motion, and I'm seconding her amended motion.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
My comment, I would agree with Counselor Abrams. I don't have a redlined copy, so it was really hard for me to follow, all those changes that you...
I did ask staff to send each one of us a redlined copy. I printed mine out and brought it.
I didn't get one.
So the motion then on the floor is to, with the use of the friendly amendment, to strike these various things Counselor Abraham pointed out,
Yes,
and then pass that?
yes.
And was there a second friendly amendment?
Yes.
What was it?
Oh, I was seconding her revised amendment, her revised motion.
On passing it with the strikes?
Right.
And so that takes precedence over the suggestion to table it, correct?
Yes, I call for the question.
So the question's been called for, counselors, to approve this with the strikes that Counselor Abraham set out. Before I ask for the vote on it, I would like to add my 2 cents. A lot of these changes in here have been brought about by issues that have arisen in the last 4 or 5 months. In the instance of the conduct of the meetings about Robert's rules, I did contact Randy Van Vleck. He said it does not apply to the public. As far as recording devices being turned off, if can work and we don't have to do it, it doesn't matter there. Times, lengths for people speaking, again, it's always been 2 minutes, way back to the very start, on public speaking. It's only recently that it's been, a problem. For the first 3.5 years of my term in office here, I was very liberal with people speaking. I spent a lot of time on that side of that podium. I know how it is, but it got carried away this last year to the point that all we were doing was having public comments.
Mr. Mayor, can I
Let
make
me
a...
finish.
Okay.
Let me finish. So the one on the 5 minutes for the hearings obviously can be waived, but again, it was getting carried away to where people were just filibustering away. Down here on the 5 minutes for the counselors, same thing there. Never been a problem before, but this last year, it just got to be where some nights we were in here 25, 30 minutes or more listening to one of them go on and on. A reasonable person would figure that basically the reason we had Randy Van Vleck come in, and I understand you weren't there for that meeting.
It was scheduled while I was on vacation.
No, I wasn't talking to you, the member of the public that wanted to speak up, but was to try to make our meetings flow better because we had complaints from people that we were getting too tied up in talking and letting people yell and scream stuff and, make the derogatory comments that up here have been called, not called for. So we set out to make the thing work faster, smoother for everybody, and these changes that were put in here were an effort to do that. Are they different? Yes, they are. But again, it's not in other words, we had a resolution that was more liberal and allowing people to do stuff, and they took advantage of it. And these things over here, like number 9 through 12 on page 6.
Point of order, Mayor. I believe there's a call for the question.
So we understand then that a vote for.
I call the question.
Right, and I have to, then the chair has to restate the motion. Okay. The motion then is, everybody get this straight. The motion has been made to approve, was it to approve or not to approve?
To approve.
With the strikes set out by Counselor Abraham. And I don't know, you haven't got it in front of you which strikes those are.
I have it.
So a vote for the passage would strike a bunch of this stuff out that's in here. A vote against would not strike it out. So we will start there with Counselor Abraham.
No, that's not correct. The motion was to approve that resolution with her changes.
Right.
So
A vote for.
if it fails, then that resolution is not in place. And we go back to 2019,
Well, we go back-
2019's resolution.
We have to come back with another operating resolution.
Yeah, but in the meantime, 2019's resolution would stand. If her motion and my second, if this is voted down, that's what that means. That this one does not pass, and we go back to 2019 until another version is brought forward. If we even have to do that.
Start down there, Counselor Abraham.
Aye.
Counselor Abrams.
There's a couple of things that were pulled out that I really, really would like to see back in. But I'm going to go ahead and vote for it.
Counselor Holly.
Nay.
Counselor Jaramillo.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item is calendar review. We have special council meeting this Saturday, 10 a.m. here in the council chambers for the comprehensive land use plan. Town offices will be closed January 20th for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Next item I'll entertain is a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, we adjourn.
Got a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, council.